G'day and welcome back to another episode of Practical Powerlifting. In this episode, I'm solo again. Admittedly, I've been a little bit behind on work and a bunch of other commitments, so I haven't actually had a chance to organize another guest. And I really enjoyed last week. I enjoyed doing a solo episode, just spitballing for some time, sharing some of my thoughts, letting my mouth ramble. So I thought we'll do it again. I competed on the weekend, which is another reason why I've just been so occupied with preparations for the competition and then obviously the fatigue that's associated with that. So I will endeavor to have a guest on in the next episode, but for now, you're stuck with me. So strap yourself in because I've got some interesting topics of discussion that I want to bring up today. I thought first off, I would go through a little bit about how the competition went. I competed at the Southern Showdown in Ballarat, at Stronghold Ballarat. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen that. And the competition went really smoothly. And one of the things that I think I did best was my weight cut and my refeed strategy. Now, if you've been a long time friend or follower, you'll know that in a previous life, earlier edition of JP's Lifting, that I built a bit of reputation for being a very aggressive weight cutter and being a very successful weight cutter and using that to my advantage. And many years ago, I made a video on YouTube that was titled something along the lines of why weight cutting is the best way to do powerlifting. I don't know, something like that. It wasn't that at all. And maybe the thumbnail had bigger athlete equals better athlete. And it's been somewhat of a controversial video. I think the reason that it's so controversial is because it's true in the sense of I think everybody appreciates that it's true that being bigger is advantageous as a powerlifter, but where the controversy lies is in its practical application, which I think makes it the perfect topic of discussion for today's episode. Not long after I made that video, and when I say not long, I mean over the years that followed since that video, the general consensus or the general wisdom around weight cutting has shifted and has since been weight cutting is unnecessary unless you are competing at a very high level. And anything below the top level, you shouldn't be weight cutting. And I think any coach worth their salt would discourage the grand majority of their lifters from doing any sort of aggressive weight cuts, keeping their weight cuts very modest, if at all. I think the classic advice now is if someone's doing their first powerlifting competition, just compete at whatever weight you are at, which is certainly my approach also. And even when I made that initial video, I'm talking 8-10 years ago now, that was still my opinion that if you're doing your first competition, then there's no reason to concern yourselves too heavily with weight cutting. But what I want to share with you today is why I think weight cutting could still be a valid strategy used even at intermediate levels. Now, I want to preface any discussion around weight cutting with the commentary that hyperfixation on your body weight and hyperfixation on the way you look is a very dangerous road to be on. And so if you have any sort of predisposition to eating disorders, or if you have an eating disorder or a history of eating disorder or body image issues, then basically all of this discussion is irrelevant for you, and that's like a separate topic entirely. So do not conflate my discussions around weight cutting or managing your weight as it relates to powerlifting to being skinny and lean and that kind of world or bodybuilding or anything like that. These are completely different topics. I'm talking specifically from the context of an athlete competing in the sport of powerlifting who wants to maximize their competitive advantage. I think the rhetoric or the messaging that weight cutting is only for people who are competing at a very high level, in some sense, unpopular opinion, hot take I'm about to share, in some sense is a form of gatekeeping. In any sport or any hobby or any recreation, there are things that participants of that hobby, or athletes if you want to call them, will do to improve their performance. Now, in any sport or hobby, there are the big rocks. They're the things that actually matter. They're the things that make up the majority of your performance, right? So in powerlifting, the things that make up the majority of your performance, like if you total 800 kilos, 95% of your total was built from good training, good technique, consistency, years and years and years of work, right? Like weight cutting is like the top 1% of effort in the sense of like, and we always want to be encouraging people to focus on the big rocks. We always want to encourage people, hey, walk before you can run, get your training and consistency and programming on point before you worry about the minor details. But I think robbing people of the opportunity to worry about those details takes away from the experience that people get out of doing the sport. So I'm going to run you through a couple of examples, and hopefully my examples kind of make sense of what I'm trying to say. Before I run into these examples, I want to explain a little bit further what I'm saying. In order to feel like your identity, in order to feel like you are participating in this thing, there are certain things that people in that thing do, right? So like, for example, if you're a powerlifter, like if you got started in powerlifting, this is a perfect example that happens all the time in the gym. Someone comes in the gym, they start lifting weights, they start strength training, but they wouldn't call themselves a powerlifter, right? And let's say they buy their first powerlifting belt. Maybe they buy SPD knee sleeves or whatever it might be for the first time. And so they're wearing their knee sleeves for the first time in the gym. And, they're a little bit conscious, whatever. And, I congratulate them and I rile them up a little bit and I say, look, you're a real powerlifter now, right? For all intents and purposes, even wearing knee sleeves is probably not necessary, at this point in their lifting career. What matters more is just getting physically stronger, doing the training. But buying knee sleeves, wearing knee sleeves, is almost like a social cue to people externally that you are a power lifter, that you are doing the thing that powerlifters do. Now, unlike weight cutting, the consequences or the drawbacks of wearing knee sleeves are like basically nil, right? Other than the upfront cost. And I will acknowledge that weight cutting has many drawbacks, many negatives. And, I kind of alluded to earlier about the consequences to body image and disordered eating and the relationship there. So I will acknowledge that. But there are things that you can do that kind of like signal to others or signal to yourself that you are participating in that thing. So, for example, if you are preparing for a half marathon or for a marathon, you might not be very good. And having like a running vest with like running hydration strapped to you and stuff mightn't be necessary for the level that you're at, for example. I don't know a lot about running. But people will do that because it makes you feel like you are doing the best that you can. You are leaving no stone unturned. You're making the greatest effort that you possibly can towards this sport. Now, the person that's doing that half marathon, they're not going to win. If you're going to run a 2-hour half marathon, like you're not competitive in any way, shape, or form. Yet you still want to go out and buy the $350 shoes. You still buy the nice watch. You still do things that make you feel like you are putting in effort. Like there would be some snobbery, I'm sure, amongst runners where if you weren't tracking your workouts on your Garmin or on Strava, then are you even doing running properly? And similarly in powerlifting, if you are not wearing knee sleeves or a belt or whatever it might be, are you doing powerlifting properly? I'm going to relate this to a hobby that's close to my heart, obviously, chess. In chess, at high levels, players will prepare. What we use this term prepare. And what preparing is basically looking into the opponent that you're going to play and looking at all their games and analyzing what their openings are. And then you prepare your openings in preparation. So for example, let's say next Monday, I'm playing against Joe Smith and I know Joe Smith plays a Sicilian defense. All right, if you don't follow chess, then I'll make this as simple as possible, right? Joe Smith plays this opening called the Sicilian defense. So I'm going to prepare what I think will be my best strategy against the Sicilian defense because he's renowned in the local chess scene as playing a Sicilian defense. So I'm going to prepare, right? Now, at the top level, preparation is like almost everything because the top players all know each other. They all know that every game has ever been played has been recorded. So preparation is a very, very big part of professional chess. Now, at amateur chess, the level that I play at, it would be very reasonable for someone to say, don't bother with preparation. Instead, just focus on improving at the game in general. Like do your general study, your general training. Don't worry about preparation. But lots of people like to prepare, and I like to prepare because preparing makes me feel like I'm a professional chess player, right? Not that it makes me feel like I'm a professional, but makes me feel like I'm closer to, or makes me feel like not closer in terms of like my ability, but closer in terms of my identity. It's like, yeah, of course I'm going to prepare because I'm going to take this seriously. This is what I do. On Monday, I'm playing, some local guy at my club, some guy at my local club who I know what they play. So I'm going to prepare for them. And so when I sit at the board and they play the exact moves that I was expecting, then I have all my preparation ready and I'm able to play as best as I can. Now, again, a lot of people would say that that's probably unnecessary, but it makes me feel like I'm, I guess, participating in my chosen sport or hobby at the best level. So how does this relate to powerlifting? Well, if you're going to total 540 kilos at 74 kilo class in a local comp, or in women's context, let's say 350 at 76, you're not going to be winning any competitions with those totals, right? Or you're not going to be winning any important competitions, I suppose. And so a lot of people would have the opinion that it's not necessary to weight cut. It's not something that is advisable. But if that same person was doing everything else, like, again, let's just pick a single example. Some guy is working towards a 550 kilo total at 74, and they bought new deadlift slippers, right? And they had a coach who they were paying, and they did mental visualization, and they got to the venue early, and they checked they did some warm up sets on the competition rack because they wanted to visualize their performance on that rack. And they did all these small details that many people would say is unnecessary, but you wouldn't call it unnecessary because they're just doing everything they can in their power to do the best they can. And if any of my clients did that, if any of my lifters did that, I would commend them and I would encourage them to do that. I was like, let's take this seriously, do everything right. Don't be so nonchalant. Don't be so dismissive of your performance. Instead, let's take everything seriously. Let's leave no stone unturned. But for some reason, weight cutting gets put on this in this position where it's gate kept. And I say for some reason, and I know the reason. And the reason is what I said earlier, is that there are consequences. It can be dangerous to your physical health. It can be very dangerous to your mental health. So I understand that there are consequences and downsides. Don't get me wrong. Like getting to the venue early or buying yourself new lifting slippers have no downsides, right? Other than the cost. Whereas weight cutting, yes, of course there are downsides. But I think to blanket rule it as that unless you are at some level, then you shouldn't be weight cutting, I think is a little bit unfair. And I think maybe a better approach is that weight cutting should be reserved for someone who has demonstrated to themselves that they are putting the effort in all other areas. And if you're ticking all the other boxes, then you've in some sense earned the right to now uptick your performance that much. Like if you are weighing 74 and you're preparing for a meet, that's, 6 months away, then why wouldn't you want to put on some weight, get up to 76 or 76 and a half kilos, and then weight cut your way down? That would give you a competitive advantage, just like buying the newest knee sleeves gives you a competitive advantage, just like training at the powerlifting gym gives you a competitive advantage, just like any other modality or technique that we use gives you a competitive advantage. It's just another technique or another tool, one that has high risk, of course. And I want to restate that 1,000 times. One that has obvious consequences and that should be done carefully, but one that shouldn't be gatekept, one that shouldn't be reserved only for the best. Because if you total 550 at 74 at a local comp, and part of the reason that you were able to achieve that was because you did a weight cut and you win a gold medal and someone else totaled only 545, then you deserve the medal. And for a lot of people, those medals mean a lot. This is a little side note, but one freaking pet peeve of mine is that a lot of good lifters who are also coaches, so I'm talking about people like myself and my peers, can often be very dismissive of medals at local comps. They'll say things like, yeah, it doesn't matter until you're at a top level, or it can just be very dismissive of the experience of novice and amateur lifters at local comps. But as a meet director for the last 8 years, having meet directed nearly 30 competitions, one thing I've really come to appreciate is, no, those medals at local comps matter freaking heaps. Like I've had amateur and beginner lifters say, this is the first medal I've ever won, or when they weren't able to collect their medal at presentation, been so desperate to get me to collect it and then present it to them at the gym, I've had people crying getting a silver medal at local comps. And so, yeah, as a little side note, your results at local comps matter. Even if you're a national level lifter, right? If you've gone to worlds or if you've competed at nationals, it's very easy to be like, nah, medals at local comps don't matter. But it doesn't matter to you, but to the amateur and novice powerlifter, it freaking matters. And so if doing a weight cut to be more competitive is advantageous, then they should be allowed to do it, obviously with the right guidance and with the right support. And similar to my example, I was going to say similarly to my example earlier about preparing for a chess match, makes me feel like, okay, I'm taking this seriously. I'm a real powerlifter. Cutting weight can make an amateur lifter feel like I'm taking this seriously. Like they're so meticulous. Like a lot of lifters, like powerlifting attracts a lot of, the classic type A lifter who loves spreadsheets and tracks their body weight every day, or tracks their nutrition, and they love, counting their calories, and they love measuring their sleep. And so this is just another way for a lifter to feel like they are, again, I'm using the term repeatedly, leaving no stone unturned and making the highest effort possible. And so I suppose my message here is, like, to summarize, is that while weight cutting is a very advanced or relatively advanced strategy that we can use to be more competitive in powerlifting comps, while it obviously has risks and downsides, it isn't something that is reserved for high-level lifters. However, it should be something that is available and is considered for lifters of all levels, provided that, again, they're in a safe space to do it both mentally and physically. And so we as a powerlifting community should not be gatekeeping this strategy, because it's a very valid strategy for lifters at all levels to gain a competitive advantage. Okay, that's my little rant about weight cutting. And to round it off, I want to share with you a story, maybe two stories. I've got two stories in mind about JP's weight cutting adventures. The first one was from 2017 Nationals, I believe, and I was lifting in the 74 kilo category. And in my 33 meets that I've done, my 33 free lifts that I've done specifically, I've never missed weight. Something I'm very proud of, as I've never missed weight. But in 2017, weigh-ins were at 11 a.m. and they were in the city, the CBD of Melbourne. And I was living in the, I wouldn't call it the suburbs, but maybe 30, 35 minutes away from the city. And I was trying to make weight, and let's say the weigh-ins were at 11 a.m. and it was about 10:30 a.m. So 30 minutes before weigh-in started, and it's a 30-minute drive. And I was in the sauna at a local pool, and my weight was still half a kilo over. Roughly half a kilo, I don't remember the exact numbers. And it was the first time that I'd cried in a weight cut. And Billy was with me at the time. And I come out of the sauna and I was just crying, and I said to her, I'm not going to make it. I just looked her dead in the eye. I said, I've mucked this up. I've totally mucked up the timing. I've done something wrong, but I'm not going to make it. Weigh-in start in half an hour. I'm half an hour away, and I'm still half a kilo over. And she said to me, you have time. Weigh-in start at 11, but they don't close till 12:30. You have the time if you want to make it. And it was just such a revelation for me, because of course, weigh-in start at 11, but they don't close till 12:30. So I actually had an extra hour and a half that in my mind, I was like, I have to be there by 11, but realistically, I could get there as late as 12:30. And with her support and with her, I suppose support and pushing me and her presence, I got back in the sauna and I lost that extra half kilo or whatever it was. Something flicked in my head where I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. All right, my weight comes down, and I figured the thing about weight cutting is it's very difficult to check your weight because you're covered in sweat or you're covered in clothes potentially. So it's very hard to actually get an accurate read of your weight. And every time you check your weight, it costs you time that you could have spent sweating. So anyway, we decided to run the clock down rather than checking. I'm just like, let's just run the clock all the way to the last minute, because I'd rather give myself the best chance possible. We get to the venue. Weigh-ins close at 12:30, like I said, with lifting starting at 1. I run to the weigh-in spot at 12:29. I get there. I literally get there at 12:29. The referees look at me like, okay, get on the scales, mate. Let's see what you are. And I was 74.05, so I still wasn't there. And I looked at the referee. I was like, "Oh, can I get another weigh?" And he's like, "You've got 1 minute. I'll give you one chance. Get out, and you can try again." So I get out of the weigh-in room. I'm bent over like a big wheelie bin, and I'm spitting into the bin. I've got my coach Simon Bergner there, drying me off with a towel. Like I'm like he's literally rubbing this towel all over my back, the back of my head, any hair that I've got in between my legs, under my armpits, just trying to like squeeze off any amount of water that possibly is on moisture that's on my skin. I'm spitting into the bin. I can't even remember who the referee was at the time, but he's looking at me like, "All right, come on, it's 12:30, you got to weigh in." I'm like, "Give me 30 seconds." He's like, "Hurry up." I'm spitting to the bin. I get on the scales, 74.00. I've made weight. It's 12:30 or 12:31, whatever it is. Lifting starts in 30 minutes. I think it was a one lifter group potentially. And so that meant that I didn't even have the extra half an hour of group A to go first. So I had half an hour away, and we dropped my squat opener by like 30 kilos or something stupid. And I lifted terribly. Unsurprising to anybody that knows how hard weight cutting can be. But yeah, that was like the closest I've ever had to an epic fail. I mean, I would call that an epic fail anyway. That was a nationals that I could have and should have won, and I didn't because of this mistake. And like I said, there are consequences. Weighing in heavy gives you an advantage because you're bigger, but if done wrong, they can lead to occasions like that. So, moments like that or stories like that, I feel like I learn a lot from. And yeah, like I said at the start of this episode, the weight cut and the refeed that I did this time around at Southern Showdown was probably the best I've ever done because I was heavy and I was strong and I was full of energy. It felt like I hadn't even done a weight cut at all. Okay, the second story that I want to share with you is from, I can't even remember the year, but it might have been 2015 Junior Nationals. Now, if you were around powerlifting 10 years ago, you'll remember the period where Junior Nationals was being held at the Arrow Hotel in Carlton. It happened there a couple of years in a row, I think 3 years in a row. Anyway, and I was training at Obsidian Strength at the time, RIP, and there was a big group of us doing the Junior Nationals, and I was coaching everyone basically every junior in freaking Victoria I was coaching, it felt like at the time. So I'm running in and out of the venue. There was a sauna not far from the venue. It might have been the Carlton Baths, but I might not have been actually. Anyway, it was probably like 200 meters from the venue. And my young sister, was also competing at Junior Nationals, and she had to get in the sauna. And while she was in the sauna, I had other lifters that were warming up and on the platform. And so I left her and I said, probably needed to be in there for an hour, I think was what we were expecting, or maybe 45 minutes. Because she had to make weight as well. So I threw her in there and I said, "Look, I'll be back in half an hour to check on you. I'm going to go to the platform." And she's like, "Okay, go do what you need to do." Anyway, 20 minutes later, I get a phone call, and it's the staff from the baths or the pool or whatever. And she'd passed out in the sauna, actually. And I cannot tell you how much my heart dropped. My heart absolutely sunk to my stomach. They'd told me that they'd called an ambulance because she's suffering from severe dehydration. I run straight over to the venue, literally tears in my eye. I feel like I've the biggest failure of a brother that has ever existed. I get there, she's lying on the tiles of the reception floor, and she has like, not a paramedic, but first aid people there taking care of her. She's like freaking pale white. She's like barely responsive and stuff. I'm literally crying. Like I think she's freaking dead or something. Like I have no idea what's going on. And anyway, they kind of try to talk to her and stuff, and like she eventually like comes back to consciousness, and they try to give her some water, and she literally swats the water away, and she says, no, I can't have any water. I have to make weight. And I said to her, "Don't worry about making weight. Fuck the comp. Who gives a shit, mate? This is like, I'm glad you're alive. Like, just drink." And she's like, no. I'm going to lift. And I'm laughing now because obviously I know how it all pans out. But at the time, you can imagine, like, again, my heart's in my throat and I feel like an idiot. And I feel very embarrassed. Obviously she's okay. I feel very embarrassed. I feel like so stupid. Anyway, she waves off the first aid, and we say to the people at the reception, "No, it's okay. We don't need an ambulance. Like, we'll take care of her, and I'll take her to the hospital if we need to." And I take her outside, and I remember standing at the front of the venue, like literally on the roadside, and I was like, "What do you want to do? Like, you're an adult, well, you're 18. I can't tell you what to do. I'm not making you do anything. If it's up to me, we're going to the hospital and we're abandoning the comp. But what do you want to do?" She goes, No, I think I can do it. Anyway, she goes in and weighs in, I think, at 51.95 for the 52 kilo class. This is sub-junior nationals. Ends up winning. Like, I think there's only 2 lifters in her class. Ends up winning. I think she went, yeah, I'm pretty sure she went 9 out of 9. I'll find the results, actually. But she went 9 out of 9. Won junior nationals, sub-junior nationals, and ended up going to an IPF Worlds. Well, I don't know if that was the year that qualified for IPF Worlds, or she'd already done the IPF Worlds the year before. I think that might have been the year that qualified for. No, she'd already gone IPF Worlds because this was in August. And so that big long ramble and rant at the start there about how it is my opinion that weight cutting is actually a strategic advantage and one that we should be used. I've ended a note on 2 basically horror stories of the dangers of weight cutting, right? Of how badly my performance went because I weight cut too late, too badly, too slowly, and the consequences. And also, of course, my sister who, needed medical attention, ended up being okay. And so, like I said at the start, there are definitely consequences, there are definitely risks. It's not as simple as like, if you buy knee sleeves, your squat will improve, full stop, no downside, only upside. It's not like that, right? And so I understand the apprehension. And again, I very much understand the apprehension because there are huge risks and associations with eating disorders and body weight and body image and all that stuff. So I totally get that. But assuming you have those bases covered, if you want to be a competitive lifter, like if you're training hard and you're doing all the right things and you're getting to your powerlifting comp, then it would be advantageous for you to put on a couple of kilos, be bigger, rather than training under the weight class. Like if you're competing in the 52 class, train at 54 and cut down to 52. Or if you're competing in the 84 kilo class, like train at 87 and cut down to 84, because you will be bigger and stronger than your rivals. Okay, that's it for me today. A bit of a short one, but I just want to share some thoughts, feelings about weight cutting. Something that's a topic that's always been close to my heart, something I feel like that I've built a bit of a reputation over the many years. And I think it just felt particularly poignant considering how things went on the weekend. I mean, I've got many success stories, obviously, from good weight cuts that I've done in the past, and maybe those are stories for another day. So if you've got any questions, or if you have any kind of comments and stuff, feel free to send them over to me. You can leave them in the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can send me a DM on Instagram and we can kind of have a bit of banter and go back and forth. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your opinions are. I know this can be a bit of a controversial topic and one that I'm happy to start a conversation on. So enjoy the rest of your week. I'll talk to you soon.